But that was a worry for tomorrow. For now they trudged on, surrounded by faithful dogs and the acrid smell of burned earth, while the world shifted and changed around them. By noon, the smoke of the fort smeared the sky like charcoal. War noise murmured miles ahead, horns shouted orders, the far rattle of engines. 3 miles, George said, squinting along the road. Maybe less. Damien shifted on the stretcher, eyes slitting open, then rolling back. Damien hadn't stirred since the mountain. His breath was steady, his skin too hot. Igo stopped. No, father, not with Damien like this. We should stay together, Ewan interjected. We don't drag Damien into a siege. Ego fixed George and Ewan with a look. Get them off the road. That swale there. Hide well. If I'm not back by sunset. We come, George said. Ego nodded once, then tugged his weather-beaten axe strap tight and loped away toward the smoke. George and Ewan hauled the stretcher into the swale, tucking Damien among Broom and Willow, the dog settling into a ring around him. The bitch lay chin on paws, eyes unblinking, like a carved guardian. Don't die, Ewan whispered to Damien, a hand on his forearm. Don't you dare. George adjusted the boy's bandage. He won't. You say that like you know. I do. Ewan glared but didn't argue. If Ego doesn't come back, what are we going to do? We go get him, like we agreed, George said firmly. Ego didn't get far before the road bent into a straggle of pikes and boiled leather breastplates. 3 watchmen shaded their eyes at him. Halt, said the biggest, moustache like 2 dead mice. Name and business. Looking for kin with the wagons, Ego answered, trying to slow his chest. Just passing. How old are you, lad? The smallest, fox-eyed, looked him up and down. Ego had turned 15 that week. 14, he lied and swallowed. Just. Fox-eyes snorted. All men over 14 are levied for the Baron. You're a head taller than me. Ma's cooking. Ego tried, shrugging, with an easy smile that fooled no one. Right. Moustache stepped down. Left or right hand with a spear? Ego shifted to see the ditch line, trees thick beyond. Left, he said, and bolted right. Hoy! He crashed through the verge, briars tearing skin. Behind him, armor clattered, boots pounded. One set of footfalls cut away, angling to intercept. Enough, Ego decided. Ego wheeled in the brush, axe sliding free with a sound like torn cloth. The pursuing watchman burst through. The young one, sword half-drawn, mouth open to shout. The axe fell. It went through helmet, bone, voice. The head left the body with a grey spray and a dull thump in leaves. The body took 2 ridiculous steps, sword arm trying to finish a gesture nobody needed anymore, then collapsed. Ego stood over it, chest heaving, a hot ringing in his ears. From the road, shouts, metal whispering out of sheaths. Marcus, Marcus! Marcus is dead, someone howled. In the trees. Run, Reason said. Something cracked inside him instead, something held tight since Blackdown, since seeing the burnt-out houses of his town, since the first road warden's smirk, since the 6-eyed nightmare. Someone had to pay the price for what had been taken. He bared his teeth at the road and charged. Brush blurred. He shouldered out onto the packed dirt of the ditch with a wordless roar. Axe up. 6 men braced, blades bright, eyes wide. Ego charged up out of the ditch and onto the road. He put his foot down in the black stripe where a wagon's axle had wept tar. His heel flew, sky, then ground, then sky again. His head met a roadstone with a sound like a hammer on a melon. Light burst and went away. The 6 men stood stunned, blades wobbling. What is he? Said one, looking at the mess on the road before them. Is he? Look at the blood. Of course he's... The grade sergeant crouched, rolled the boy over, and grimaced. Dead, damned fool, or possessed by demon or both. Marcus, someone said, stumbling out on the woods, kneeling, hands shaking. His head. Put the fool boy on the cart, the old sergeant said, voice flat. Fetch the priest for Marcus, and mind your footing, he added. He took one more look at the boy before turning back to the camp, savage but useless. They dragged Ego like a sack, boots leaving twin grooves, and tossed him among the day's harvest on the middle death cart. An arm flopped, palm open to the sky. Flies came. Far back along the road, Ewan had been arguing for an hour. He should have been back by now. It hasn't been an hour. You said that half an hour ago. If we go, we leave Damien with no one but dogs. The dogs are better than us at this. Ewan's voice frayed. Come on, George, we have to go. George stared toward the smoke, jaw set. Then he set his hand on Ewan's brow, murmured, Stay. Watch, to the bitch, pointing the Ewan and then forest around them, and then rose. Fine, we go. Quiet and fast, you follow my lead. Dusk painted the siege camp in blood-orange smoke. The watch had changed, new faces at the pikes on the road. These ones didn't ask many questions as the boys walked up to the camp. Two more, said a grizzled watchman leaning lazily on his pike. Names? We heard you need men, George said, bright and willing. We need men who can carry a pike and shut up, the man grunted. Red tent, first light, write your marks. For now there's stew at the West cook fire if you like your barley thin, and a dozen fires you can lay by if you like your pockets picked. Don't get in the way. They didn't go for the stew. They went to listen. They wandered the camp, fire to fire. Rumors ran like rats in a larder. Breaches opened and sealed, a sortie shattered, a parley promised and long wait. And then, in pieces, they got what they needed. Wild boy came out of the hedge like a devil, cut Marcus's head right off, then slipped like a calf on birth blood and cracked his skull. On the cart now, shame, strong shoulders. Ewan's mouth was a thin line. Where? Death wagons east of the surgeon tents, muttered a bored pikeman through bread. Follow the smell. They did. The smell found them first, sweet sick rot and hot iron. 3 carts, a man with a dice cup and hopeless eyes. How much for a body? George asked. The carter blinked. What? A body. A young man, this afternoon, head wound. You... He stared at the coins in George's palm. 3 coppers. 2, George said. Done. George clambered onto the cart without looking for the boy he already knew he would find among the mass of corpses. Although he could barely see in the fading daylight, he found Ego, and it was just as the rumors said. Hair matted with blood, skin chalky, lips parted with a final cry. As he always seemed to, George knew just by looking at Ego, he was alive. Barely, but alive. He pulled Ego to top of the mass of bodies on cart. The smell of the ripe bodies was almost more than he could take. With Ewan's help, he got Ego down from the cart. Then George put Ego over his shoulder with the absurd, compact strength that always startled Ewan. Shoulders taut, jaw clenched. We need a doctor, Ewan said. I know where he'll be, said an unhelpful soldier nearby, overhearing. Where all the finest physicians are, under a table. Where? George said forcefully. The old tavern, the man yawned, burning down when we arrived. Some of our boys put it out when they realized the cellar was full of untapped kegs. Ask for Bones, the gimp doctor. If he's not dead, he's hung over somewhere. I'll go get Damien, he needs a doctor too, Ewan said, turning back towards the road, striding off into the nightfall. The tavern was a shell of itself. No windows, door charred out, half a wall missing, beams black with smoke, benches sticky with the history of spilled ale. A constellation of snores filled the gloom. George noticed a leg in a leather brace sprawled under a table like a trapped spider. Doctor? George called. A man under the next table groaned, turned, farted, slept. George shifted Ego to the trestle, lifted and laid with a gentleness he would never have shown while Ego was conscious. Then grabbed a lamp from the bar and marched to the yard pump. He worked the handle until the bucket sang full, came back and upended icy water on the brace-legged man. Saints? The man spluttered himself awake, seized the table, then his head. Who? Why is the ceiling shouting? Doctor, George said again. He's dying. George pointed at Ego on the table as though it could have been someone else he was referring to. The doctor grabbed a chair and pulled himself to its seat. Breathing deep through the pain, one hand on his leg, he blinked through a fog that seemed habitual, not accidental. He took in Ego on the table, the blood, and his deathly stillness. Whatever was sodden in him, sat up and found old training. "What happened?" he asked, voice clipped but not unkind. "I don't know," George said. "Head." He touched his head. "Yesterday." The man rubbed at his eyes. "Tankard. There should be some goat's milk behind the bar." He patted his coat, found a small bottle like a priest finds his rosary, took a strained swallow and set it down with a sigh that was half relief, half apology. "Hold his shoulders." George obeyed. The man's hands, their owner wrecked, the hands themselves steady, moved Ego's lids, pressed along his skull, listened at his mouth, watched his ribs. "Interesting," he murmured. His eyes sharpened. He jabbed a finger at a big leather bag slung high on a blackened peg. That, quickly." George brought it. The man, Bones, the soldiers had called him, rummaged until he found a tiny vial the color of lightning in a storm. He cracked it and slid it beneath Ego's nose. Ego arched like a hooked fish, gasping, hands clawing at nothing. "Easy." Bones leaned in, palms firm. "You're all right, lad. You've been sleeping like the dead and breathing like a mouse. Feels wrong, but it'll pass." Ego's eyes focused in fits, coming and going. George's face came into shape, and he gripped the boy's forearm as if he meant to anchor both of them. "I knew it," George said, breathless with certainty, not relief. "I knew you were alive." Ego croaked, "Ow!" reaching back to touch the back of his head and trying to sit up. "Good assessment," Bones said dryly. "Hold still. Don't let your brain decide to do a second nap. You might not wake the next time." Ewan staggered in then, dragging a stretcher that scraped and squealed. On it lay Damien, grey under sweat, the dogs warily pacing, the bitch making a low sound that wasn't for any man there. "Another?" Bones said, already rolling his sleeves. "Fine, table's still warm." George slid Ego to a bench, kept a hand on his shoulder. He was clawed. 3 nights passed. The cuts turned black and he won't wake. Bones peeled the bandages back and went very quiet. "Of course they did," he said in a voice that had too much memory in it. "Where did the claws come from?" "A bear," Ewan said, "but not really a bear. 6 eyes," George added. "Smelled like iron in rot." Bones exhaled once. His body shivered on its own accord. The tiredness left him like water off stone. He stood straighter, found tools. "Right then, I need the lamp, a kettle of water that hasn't got dead flies in it, clean cloths if this tavern has any left, and no fewer than 3 of you to do as I say without backtalk." For hours the ruined tavern was a surgery that remembered it had also hosted joy. Bones cut and cleaned and burned and salved. He worked with an economy that made his leg vanish, his tremor smooth to stillness. He asked questions without looking up, slotting answers as if he were building a map in his mind. The boys, transfixed by the surgery, told their entire story during the hours that passed. "Your Blackdown boys, with a caravan, Teen, Teeper, Riverside, Shuel, you've been busy. Crossbow bolts, a box you didn't open. Good instincts, bears that aren't natural. Worse instincts to fight them, best instincts to win. An oracle called Yakov. Yes, I have heard of him. Children that speak in rain, them too. You boys have had quite an adventure." Bones glanced at the dogs. "And clever beasts. Good. Dogs smell wrongness before we do." He cut away what no longer belonged to Damien and left what might. He mixed a draught that stung George's nose from across the room. He worked until sweat ran down his back and the lamp burned low, and the men who'd been sleeping found someplace else to do it. By full dark, Damien slept the deep sleep of someone dragged back from the edge of death. Bones sat down and finally shook. His hand hovered over the small bottle and then withdrew. "I think I got it all," he said. "He'll need rest, real rest. Days, not hours. If you haul him, you'll lose him." "We can't stay," Ego said, voice still a little far away, but his eyes back. "If we're noticed, all this will be a waste. And the watchman." He swallowed, filling in the gaps. Bones watched him, then nodded. "And the watch will want a neck for a head." He rubbed his face vigorously and sat down finally. "I can't stay either." "You'll come?" Ewan asked. Bones looked at them, at their tired, grim faces, at the way they leaned toward each other, at how the small, dark boy with the two old eyes watched every breath the others took. "I'll come," Bones said, "at first light, but we leave before the camp's belly grumbles. We'll need a cart and my pony. My pony has fewer scruples than I do." He was as good as his word, infuriating in the precise way older men are when they know exactly how far they can push luck. Just before dawn's grey, George and Ewan turned up at the burned-out farmhouse at the camp's edge, reins in hand, an ornery dun pony dancing sideways under a stolen halter, just as Bones had instructed. The doctor stood waiting in front of a two-wheeled cart, just the right size for Damien, its leather tracery too fine for its current life. "Where did you—" Ewan started. Bones clicked his tongue. "From men who owed me favours, and from men who are too numb to notice their luck lighten." They loaded Damien gently into the cart. George tucked blankets, Ewan tied knots, Ego checked the rasp of wheel on axle. The dogs jumped in and out, and then decided, as always, to trot beside. Bones paused at the edge of the Blackfield road and looked back toward the red tents and the shining points of spearheads, toward a particular pavilion within where orders came from a mouth that grinned too easily at Ash. His courage wobbled. "I could take you boys to Ailes, Captain," he said wistfully, almost to himself. "Say you coerced me, he'd forgive a loyal drunk doctor, might even pat my head and let me keep both hands." George didn't look up from settling Damien's arm. "You won't." Bones met his eyes, those deep lake-dark eyes. "Why not?" "Because you've already decided not to. You just wanted to hear if anyone would forgive you." George shrugged. "We do." Ewan stepped in, fierce and oddly formal, voice like a bell in a small chapel. "You saved my brother and my friend, twice. Whatever you did before, that's not this. If you turn us in, you die slow. If you come with us, you have a chance to be the man you've been pretending not to be." Bones blinked. "Masterful piece of persuasion. Did you practice that in front of a mirror?" "We don't have any mirrors," Ewan replied seriously. Bones laughed once, quietly, shrugging his shoulders, and the tension drained like bad blood. "Right then, the road through the apple farms, not the main road. It is just a deer trail, really. It runs a ridge and then wanders a bit, but it should be safer. Fewer men, plenty of burned-out homes and prickle bushes. Mind your ankles." They left by the low gate, the guard there nursing a wrapped wrist that Bones had stitched the day before. A nod passed between them that pretended not to be what it was. They cut off the churned road to a pale thread of a track, where hooves had worn the summer dust to glass. The pony complained, then accepted its fate and plodded on. The dogs fanned and returned, tongues out, tails high. The boys' shadows stretched out before them. They asked questions to fill the fear. "What's Bannock like?" Ewan asked. "Rings," Bones said shortly, eyes on the trail. "Stone and spite and stairs. Riches at the top, rats at the bottom, most of us in between pretending we aren't one or the other." "Will A.L. come there?" "George, if he means to be a king of Ash, he'll try, someday. He'll want a throne to sneer from," Bones said. "He'll send knives first, then banners. He seems to never run out of men." "Who is he, Ego?" "Once, a boy who didn't like being told no," Bones said, and for the first time his voice frayed. "Now, a man who learned how to make the world say yes, even when it breaks. And something says yes back to him. That's the part that scares me." They walked until their feet were stones and the cart squeak had become a companionable heartbeat. Bones led them off the deer path, down into a hollow where a birch grove held the wind. He tied the pony, who pretended to be offended, and found a ring of old stones where many small fires had lived and died. "Here," he said, "no higher ground will hide a fire this clear night." They made one anyway, small, mean, useful. Bread appeared, hard as argument, cheese, soft as regret. A flask that was supposed to be water and wasn't, not entirely. The dogs formed their living circle and sighed. Damien slept, and his sleep was better than it had been in days. Bones rummaged in the pony's saddlebag and came up with a bottle that looked surprised to be found. "Ah," he said to it, "a survivor." He didn't drink, not right away. He sat with it in his hands, rolling it, watching the fire through the glass. George poked the coals. You said you'd tell us why you're helping, he said, and who you are. Ego leaned back against the cartwheel, eyes closing and opening. You owe us a story, Doctor. Ewan smiled, the first true smile since morning. You can start with your name. Bones tipped the bottle to wet his lips and set it down like a promise he might keep. The firelight made kind work of the wreckage of his face. Bonnard Deverley, he said. Bones to friends, Dr. Devil to men who want to flatter and insult me in the same breath. Born in Bannock, among people who smiled with their teeth and ate with their eyes. And if you'll have it, boys, I'll tell you how a ring-born fool became a drunk doctor with an ornery pony, and why walking east with you may be the first sensible thing I've done in 20 years. He cleared his throat, leaned his elbows on his knees, and the grove listened with them as the night drew in.